Now, from that description, this machine sounds very impressive, and obviously, it is not used for humanitarian purposes. For the time being, I did not have any reservations about working on the Apaches simply because I still believed that only the bad guys and the terrorists would have to fear this weapon. I believed that this weapon was infallible and that the pilots would never harm innocent people, whether accidentally or otherwise. Towards the end of my training, I received my orders placing me in the 601st Aviation Support Battalion, or ASB for short, located in Katterbach, Germany. The unit had just deployed to Iraq in early February 2004 for a year-long tour, requiring me to join them straight out of training. I arrived in Iraq immediately, one day after leaving Germany, and almost immediately went right to work. We worked 12-hour days, 6 days a week, to keep the helicopters flying. The men and women that I worked with were good people who were dedicated to completing the mission as best they could. Officially, they believed what they were doing was the right thing, bringing peace and prosperity to the Iraqi people, and thus in the long term, helping to keep America safe from terrorists. At least that is what they would say when the commander was around. However, in private conversations, I have heard many soldiers, particularly the younger ones, say they didn't really know or fully understand why they had to spend a year so far away from home, in a land that had no direct impact on their life. I began to share their sentiments and started to feel uncomfortable in my job and wonder if all service members in Iraq were making a mistake. I started asking myself, why were we here and what was our purpose? When we would bring workers from the local population to do odd jobs like build sand walls to defend our bases against attack, the look on their faces did not look like the faces of a population that felt happiness for their liberation. Some had the look of fear, while others looked outright angry and resentful. I began to feel as a cruel oppressor who had destroyed the lives of these proud people. I began to feel confused and dirty inside, but at this time didn't know exactly why. Our unit did a lot of good things, like giving school books and bringing clothes to children and distributing aids to needy families. These actions helped my conscience a bit, but I kept thinking to myself, had we not invaded, would these people need this aid now? Around the end of November 2004, I started to research the cause of the war. Not just the Iraq War, but the entire war on terror. It is my deep belief that war should always be a measure of last resort, but only in the event of self-defense. It should be noted that I did not apply for conscientious objector status at this point because I did not know it existed until just before my unit's second deployment. Until recently, to my knowledge, it was one of the best kept secrets in the Army, and it is nearly impossible to get, which I will explain later. I began to seriously reconsider the American position on the global war on terror, because I started to see serious inconsistencies between what we were being told what was happening, as opposed to what was actually going on. For example, we were told the initial invasion into Afghanistan was so that we could capture Osama bin Laden and root out the terrorists. However, several sources have stated that the war in Afghanistan was already planned as early as in July of 2001, a full 2 months before September 11th. Another disturbing example was that the Bush administration tried desperately to try to connect Saddam Hussein to September 11th, as well as shouting across the airwaves that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction that they wanted to use against America, despite overwhelming evidence that these accusations were false. These revelations were not only shocking, they were downright scary. This didn't make any sense. We were taught as a nation of free people and the so-called leaders of the free world that we stand for freedom and prosperities, not just for ourselves, but for all people. On the surface, it looked like we did a great thing. Saddam Hussein is admittedly a dictator. However, he was not leading his country to produce any sort of weapon that could be used against the U.S. government or its citizens. When I asked my sergeant about it, he told me that many people in the Army also had questions, but it was their duty to serve. We signed up for this voluntarily, I was told. That might be true, but signing up for something voluntarily does not mean I should stop thinking or having a conscience. I decided to do more research when I returned from my deployment in February 2005. Since we had considerable time off from our Iraq tour, I devoted myself to really study the subject. The problem was that the more I looked into the subject, the more uncomfortable I got. I spent a considerable amount of time cross-referencing and verifying the information that I was receiving, but I always arrived to the same conclusion. Our military is being used as a tool for worldwide imperialism under the guise to spread freedom, in other words, control, to underprivileged nations, one bullet at a time. My entire world was turned upside down. All this time, I believed in the integrity, honor, loyalty, and justice of our armed forces. We were supposed to be the good guys. As an active member of the Army, I cannot be free from the guilt of having supported this war that I was led to believe was justified. My sanity and self-worth began to plummet as I began to question how many people I have indirectly killed. How many lives have I aiding and tearing apart? What would happen if someone did this to my family and friends? I cannot know for sure to this day how much devastation was caused by those gunships. I have tried to ask the pilots in my unit to talk about their experiences, but I was told they were not allowed to talk about their missions because it is classified information. I was also stymied when I tried internet research, as the military will not release rotary wing statistics, rotary wing being helicopters. I am not alone as, sorry about this. I am not alone, as several reporters have lamented their frustration at having no access to these important statistics. I'm going to read an example from a news article written by Nick Terse on May 24th, 2007. Minimalist figures regularly given out by CENTAF, which is the Central Air Force Command, hardly offer an accurate picture of the air war in Iraq. When combined with the military's evasive non-answers, they are also a reminder of what a dearth of information is actually available, even on seemingly innocuous matters relating to the war in Iraq. From January through April, I posed questions to a Coalition Press Information Center media contact, one Staff Sergeant Wiley. After being rebuffed on the topic of munitions expenditure, I asked in January about the total number of rotary wing sorties flown in 2006. The aptly named Wiley responded that she or he sent it out to the relevant directorates and was awaiting a response. I will contact you as soon as I get something. That turned out, despite following up, to be never. Following a March 30th query regarding the relevant directorates, she or he entreated me by email to drop my request for information. Facing the reportorial void, I asked if Wiley would at least provide his or her full name and title for attribution in this article. She or he has yet to respond. It is no secret that the Apache is a devastating weapon. When I looked at the videos of suspected insurgents being shredded by machine guns or blown to bits by the missiles, I see the results of my handiwork. After combining that with the damage to the infrastructure, widespread poverty and disease, accidental deaths, and millions of refugees, I thought to myself, what have we done? I do not believe there is a worse feeling in the world than to believe what you were doing was the right thing, only to find out that you contributed to the spread of misery and destruction. This revelation had a terrible effect on me. I became depressed, started to drink heavily off duty, showing up to work late, and began arguing with my superiors on virtually every single issue. I was asked many times what my problem was, but I couldn't bring myself to come out and say the truth, that I did not want to be a part of this anymore. Many people asked me why I did not seek to leave the service earlier. Truth is, I had the opportunity to do just that. Because of my bad behavior, in August 2005, I received an Article 15 non-judicial punishment and was threatened with removal from the service.